JDs and Lennon and everyone and everything in between. This is my AFL Brownlow prediction. Now, for a bit of context, I am extraordinarily sick right now. So if the vibes are a little bit low and the energy's a bit low, I'm sorry. I am gonna be giving you a top 6 because there are a couple guys that I feel like I just should mention. Now, will this be the year that side bottom, that Brayshaw creep up? Will this be another Cooney year? You know, where did he come from? Matt Priddis year? How did he win this? Or will this be like the Tom Mitchell year where everyone and their fucking dog knew Tom Mitchell was gonna win? Starting off in 6th place, I'm gonna go with Chad Warner. Now, before I get into this, I'm not putting Isaac Heaney in this list. I think he would finish around 3rd or 4th, but he obviously got the suspension. He's not eligible, or was ineligible. Chad Warner in 6th place for me is a little bit of bias. Now, I always mention this in Brownlow videos, but in preseason predictions, this guy fucking mentioned that he's gonna win the Brownlow. So I'm one of the few people who knew this beast of a man was gonna come to life. The reality is, the end of his season was nowhere near good enough to, did he even make All-Australian actually? Yeah, sorry, he did make All-Australian in the half-forward line, but geez, he was lucky to get in there in my opinion. But there's a little bit of bias there. I have him in 6th place. The start of his year was amazing. The only problem is Errol Goulding and Isaac Heaney will both be taking quite a few votes off him, but the reality is I like him and I have him in 6th place. Now the top 5 of this is pretty conclusive, and I don't have Errol Goulding in my top 5, and that's not because I don't think he deserves it. I think Errol Goulding, in his position, is one of the best players in the comp. If you think about, let's say Charlie Curnow, best forward in the comp, that's pretty conclusive. Errol Goulding, best winger in the comp, but he's the best winger by a country mile. So you could argue, for position to position, relative to their position, a lot of positions in that fucking sentence, relative to their position, Goulding is the best player in the comp. But I'm doing this on the scope of umpires, okay? Not who I would vote for, it's who I think the umpires would vote for. Watching the games, going back at looking at some stats, high position games generally get more count. And I just think on the wing, umpires will focus more on those inside midfielders, the goal scorers, than Errol Goulding, which is why I don't have him in. And in 5th place, I do have Marcus Bontempelli. I love the bunt, and I think the bunt is the best player in the game. But the reality is, Adam Treloar has had that good of a season, and I think that midfield work is going to attract a lot of votes. Now, the bunt ended the season really well, and he generally either didn't poll, in my opinion. He generally wouldn't have polled, or he would poll best on grounds. There were some games where he was clearly BOG, but there are a lot of games where him and Treloar were getting the votes. And I think Treloar is a sneak pick, or whatever you call it, sort of underdog, dark horse type pick. And I'll go through my dark horses at the end, but he's one of them, giving it away. But I really want to put the Bont as one. I want the Bont to win the Brownlow. That's the reality of it. He's deserved at least 2 by now, and the fact he hasn't won 1 I think is criminal, but I don't think this season is going to win it. He wasn't good enough towards the middle start of the year, and I think he wasn't consistent enough to win those 3 grain votes, and that's why I have him in 5th. In 4th place, I've got Zach Merrett. I think Zach Merrett's going to poll really, really well. I also think that his competition, which is usually Parrish and Nick Martin, won't poll too well, sorry. Nick Martin is a winger as well, and he'll still get a lot of votes, Nick Martin, but I think Zach Merrett, a little bit of bias here as well, even though he plays for Essendon, and they're my most hated club as a Richmond fan, Zach Merrett is one of my favourite players to watch. The kicking skills he has, the leadership skills, the hard running, the inside, the outside work, the goal scoring capabilities, the football IQ. This guy is arguably top 3 players in the comp. Look, he can't go higher than 4th place. There's a clear top 3 for me, unfortunately. But I think he's going to poll maybe 1 vote more than Bontempelli. They might even draw. But just watching him, and I've watched a lot of Essendon games this season, every time Essendon needs someone, it's usually him. It's usually him. And I think given a good start to the season, he's going to poll really well. And that drop-off from Essendon later on in the season is going to coincide with maybe a drop-off of Zach Merrett, and he might not get the top 5, but I back him in to get 4th place. In 3rd place, Lachie Neale. I think everyone and his grandpa and his dog, and even people who don't even know this game exists, like in North Korea, would have Lachie Neale in 3rd place. There's a clear top 3, and I think there's a clear top 2 out of that top 3. And Lachie Neale, for me, doesn't make that top 2. And I love Lachie Neale. I don't have anything against him. I think he's a great player, a great bloke, and a fucking sexy human being. But I hate multiple Brownlow winners winning. I think it's so boring. When Fife won his 2nd one, fucking lame. When fucking Neale won his 2nd one, lame. And if Neale wins the 3rd, it's like, come on, just stop. And also the problem is if Neale wins 3 Brownlows, he has to go in the GOAT conversation. But for me, he doesn't belong there. I still would have every day of the week, the Fives, the Dangers, the Dusties over this man. And that's personal preference. But the reality is, the start of his season was slow, coinciding with Brisbane, but the middle and end part of his season, he was dominant. And you watch him play, and you just know the umpires are going to vote for him. And I think maybe there's that subconscious bias that umpires have when they're watching Brownlow winners, that they just look at them that little bit more and go, wow, yeah, this is why they're a Brownlow winner. And then they're in their heads. And then after the game, when they vote the umpires, they're going to vote for this guy. And I think there's that really slight chance he can win this. And just because I can't be fucked dealing with a 3-time Brownlow winner, I don't want this to happen. And I don't think it will happen because the 2 lads ahead of him have had outstanding seasons. And let's get onto them right now. Now the top 2 in a certain order, which you'll hear in a second, is Cripps and Daicos. They've been the best player, or best players throughout the course of the season. Daicos started the season quite slow. And I think Cripps was pretty good throughout the entire season. And both had really good ends of the season. I mean, Daicos, those last 2 games were practically unstoppable. In fact, he could poll like record 3-vote games, this man, Nick Daicos. Now, I have seen a lot of mixed stuff. I've seen Brownlow predictors have Daicos 1, Cripps 1, having even a draw. I've gone through every game and also just watching some of the games, analyze their performances. And I think the stark reality of this is Nick Daicos is going to struggle to get over Cripps because of that. A, he's already won the Brownlow Cripps, so umpires will know about him. And I know that sounds dumb, but maybe there's an unconscious bias, but I think the other thing is Cripps is that big inside mid who gets more contested possessions, more clearances, his inside works better, but also he's bigger and you can just see him more. And I know that sounds really dumb, but we need to find fine margins in this because I have them pretty equal on votes. Yeah, Cripps dominates the clearances and the contested work. The one thing I did want to remind myself on is the goals. Who has kicked more goals? Because I think that could genuinely be the difference between these 2 players is the goal kickers. And as I scroll down here, Nick Daicos has kicked for 20 goals this season, so averaging more or less a goal a game. Patrick Cripps has kicked 17. So I guess Daicos kicking slightly more goals. I want Nick Daicos to win. I think he deserves it. I think he deserved it last season, and I think it would be nice for him to get a Brownlow because, you know, last season the injury, he couldn't do anything about it. And unfortunately, even though I want him to win and I don't want Cripps to win because he's already won one, I have Cripps winning by a vote. I have him winning by a vote, and this is kind of just to separate them because it's boring if I choose a combined winner. Even though it'll be cool, but I'm going to put my head on the line and say Cripps gets it done by a vote, by 1 vote. Either way, they both deserve the Brownlow. I mean, whoever wins deserves it really, but I got Cripps winning. But yeah, that's my Brownlow prediction. What are your thoughts? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you when I'm not so sick.